Good afternoon, everyone. But before I start, I'm not sure if this was brought up on Monday because I wasn't here on Monday. But anyway, I would just like to reintroduce two staff members from RSPO that has recently joined us and will be taking over the greenhouse gas portfolio. So we have the new greenhouse gas manager, which is Jabin. Jabin, can you please stand up? And also the new greenhouse gas executive is Devala. Please stand up. So in future, all matters regarding greenhouse gas will be basically through the two of them, and I'll be transitioning out from the greenhouse gas portfolio. But for this month and next month, we're still doing a lot of handover stuff, so that's why I'm here presenting on this. But in future CB workshops, then you'll be hearing more from Jabin and Devala and not from me. So I have two presentations basically for this afternoon. One of it is focused on the RSPO greenhouse gas assessment procedure, which is the procedure that's related to criterion 7.8. And the second presentation will be on the PALM GHG calculator, which most of you will associate with criterion 5.6. Okay, just to refresh, although all of you should already know this, there are basically two indicators in 7.8. The first indicator focuses on the identification and estimation of your carbon stock, as well as the potential greenhouse gas emissions. So that is in terms of the identification and your assessments. The second indicator is on the management plan. So once you know what your carbon stock is, what your potential greenhouse gas emission is, what is your plan to manage these emissions and to reduce and avoid? So these are the two main components of the criteria. I can't get it to work. Maybe it doesn't like me. Okay, little pointer. All right, okay, yeah. So when does the criteria become effective? Well, basically it's mandatory to comply with the criterion now, and there is an implementation period with regards to criteria 7.8, which basically ends this year. And what the implementation period means is that during this time, public reporting of what happens in 7.8 is voluntary, and it only becomes mandatory after the implementation period, which is as of 1st January 2017. And the purpose of this implementation period is to give time to the emission reduction working group to review and refine the tools, the factors and methodologies that are being used in this greenhouse gas assessment procedure. So by 1st January 2015, when a company were to submit their NPP report, it should already be accompanied by a summary report covering all the requirements of 7.8. So at that time of 1st January 2015, we are still relying on the old NPP document, which was introduced in 2010. And of course, at that time, there was no 7.8, so there was no requirements whatsoever on greenhouse gas and carbon stock. It's only on like HCB and SEIA and FPIC. So it's only in this new 2015 MPP documents that you would have something on the reporting on 7.8. So at that time when we released this announcement, it was based on the old MPP document. So that's why the 7.8 is basically a standalone report. But now that it has been integrated into the new MPP, it's already part of your MPP submission that you must include this report. However, the requirements of the implementation period still stands. That means you will not find this particular report in the public domain together with the rest of your MPP notification documents. It will only be in the public domain as of 1st January 2017. So this is also like one of the common questions that we get, and also when the reports are submitted. Is historic land use change emissions considered under criterion 7.8? No, this is different from HCV, where you're supposed to do a land use change analysis. For carbon, you don't have to do any retrospective assessment. So when the company does their assessment, they don't need to show us what it was in 2005 and give us an estimation of the carbon stock in 2005 versus what it is now. The comparison that they need to make before and after refers to the time at the point that they were planning the new development. So there's no historic element to their assessment. So what the RSPO has introduced is what we call the greenhouse gas assessment procedure, which provides a methodology for growers to estimate the carbon stock for new plantation development, and it's meant to be compatible with the other parts of Principle 7, like soil survey, SEIA, and HCV assessments. So we actually ask all companies to please refer to the greenhouse gas assessment procedure when preparing for 7.8, because it details out the steps that needs to be taken in order for you to be considered to have complied with criterion 7.8. Now, one of the issues with 7.8 is there a threshold on what is high carbon stock? This question has been raised a few times, and RSPO at the moment does not define what is high carbon stock. We have a definition for low carbon stock, which is in the RSPO P&C 2013 in the annex, but we do not provide a threshold. So what happens when there is no threshold? That's why when you look at our procedure, what's required is that the company needs to integrate the findings of their carbon stock assessment together with the HCV assessment and other community assessments as part of SEIA, and select the optimal development scenario and develop a plan to mitigate the possible impacts and to report on what the projected changes and emissions will be. So there is no defined go or no-go area. We leave it to the company to develop an optimal development scenario based on what's already in their company policy and their company commitments with regards to high carbon stock and no deforestation. So there is a bit of subjectivity there where the company will decide what is their areas that they will develop on based on the assessments that they have done. Of course, HCV, it's very clear. You can't clear HCV areas. Yes.
When we refer to this particular MPP and this greenhouse gas assessment tool that you have came up with for the MPP, see, you have to demonstrate scenarios in those aspects on the various high and low, medium level. Mm-hmm. Now, if there's really no threshold references for the growers to come up with, how would actually eventually the CBs could assess the NPP? In this case, are we just as a postman saying that we have seen the palm GHG submitted to the greenhouse gas working group and has been discussed in the HCS toolkit, along the HCS toolkit, and these are the recommendations by the HCS consultants or the assessors that need to be addressed in the palm GHGs at the time of the operation?
So what the auditor needs to check for, and I will go into this in a little bit more detail in the later slides, is that the reports that are submitted by the company meets all the requirements that is outlined in the greenhouse gas assessment procedure and provides all the information that is asked for in the greenhouse gas procedure. Because the greenhouse gas procedure tells you how you need to do your scenario setting and how you need to rationalize your decision based on that. So all these needs to be provided for in the report. And of course, it's just like with some of the assessments, if the company says this, okay, I assessed this and this is what I found, then there is also maybe some verification on your part that what is being reported in the assessment is true. But the important thing here for the HCS part is that they did follow all the necessary steps and provided all the necessary information as outlined in the procedure. And I have a couple of slides to talk a little bit more about that. So in this particular case, I mean, we do recognize the complexity of not having a set threshold. But I think it's also clear to everyone the difficulties and challenges of setting any threshold. I think no group is actually brave enough to impose one threshold on the whole industry. So, and I would say also RSPO is not at that point where we can do this. I'm not sure, come the next PNC review, whether the RSP will be brave enough to say this is the one value that no one can go and clear after. So we'll see what happens. But at the moment, there is no threshold. So we ask companies to review the pros and cons of the various development scenarios. And they have to take into account, for example, the avoidance of HCV areas as determined by the HCV assessment, the avoidance of peatland. But also we bear in mind that they also have to take in practical management considerations that is outside of all of this, for example, access and connectivity and other socio-economic concerns in terms of their plantation design. So all these reasons for selecting their preferred development option have to be given. Okay, so there are also other initiatives that talk about high carbon stock aside from RSPO. Like the most common is the HCS approach, and also more recently the HCS Plus study. Several members of the RSPO have committed to either the HCS Plus process or even the HCSA process or even both processes at the same time. The latest development is that both parties behind HCS Plus and HCSA have agreed that they will come to convergence, meaning that they will all come behind one single methodology, taking into consideration the synergies between both their methods. So RSPO is keeping a close eye on what this convergence would mean, but at the moment, of course, they remain two separate methods. Another important thing that I want to highlight is that the greenhouse gas assessment procedure, right now what you find online is the December 2014 version. And we want to update this before the end of 2016 because we have seen already many submissions between this time. And then based on the submissions and everything, we also realized that some companies remain confused on certain things. There are also areas where we could have been clearer in our procedure, perhaps give more explanation, more illustration, and more guidance, which we did not have in the December 2014 version that will actually help companies prepare better reports. So we want to take into account all these things in our update, and also how we deal with HCS Plus and HCSA. We also want to give better guidance and better clarification in the updated version. And we are targeting that the updated version can come out by July or August. I'm looking at Javin now. But we want to also stress that HCS Plus and HCSA only comes so far in terms of compliance with criterion 7.8. And that there are other elements in the criterion that is not covered by HCS Plus and HCSA. So even if a company were to use either methodologies, they still have to make sure that all the other additional components are also prepared and reported to the RSPO. And I'll elaborate more on that in the next slide. Oh, sorry. So for example, right now, if a company wants to use HCS plus study to estimate their carbon stocks, fine, this is accepted by RSPO. So you would apply the methods by HCS plus, and then do all the things that is prescribed by HCS plus. The important thing here is that the company shouldn't cherry pick. So they shouldn't see like, oh, there are some stuff I like in HCS plus, but some stuff that I don't like. So I pick what I like. And then there's some stuff that I like in the greenhouse gas assessment procedure, but stuff that I don't like, I ignore. And the same with the HCS approach. Then they do a combined thing, which is some sort of hybrid version of like 2 or 3 different processes. That's something that we do not allow. So if you want to subscribe to HCS plus study, then do the whole HCS plus study. Okay? So if they say that 75 tons carbon per hectare is your threshold, then 75 tons carbon per hectare is your threshold. So you don't say, I use the HCS plus study, but I want to use 100-ton threshold. Then that is not accepted. So once you have done that, then you have to do all the other things that 7.8 requires to do. So you have to follow the rest of the greenhouse gas assessment procedure. Because the HCS plus study only allows you to assess and estimate your carbon stock, but it doesn't provide anything about developing a management plan to manage your emissions. Because the study is not about managing your emissions, the study is more about, okay, what is the best methodology to estimate carbon stock. So you need to do the rest to comply with the rest of 7.8. Similarly with the HCS approach, if you subscribe to the approach, you do everything as the approach does, but all the additional components of the RSPO greenhouse gas procedure still applies, because in the HCS approach, it also does not talk about a management and mitigation plan. And even if you were to use the HCS plus study or the HCS approach, the RSPO reporting framework still applies, meaning that no matter what methodology you use, you still have to report the same information to RSPO. And in our assessment procedure, we actually provide quite a comprehensive outline of the reporting framework that we require. And we need all companies to follow that same reporting framework. So this is what we do. We take our reporting framework and we put it into a checklist. When a report is submitted, we check according to our reporting framework, did you meet all these requirements? Did you provide all this information? If you did, then it's yes. If you're not, no. Or maybe you did provide, but it's incomplete or inadequate. So maybe it's like very briefly and there's not enough information to the thing. So basically, it's our reporting framework that we have made into a table, and we check all reports against the reporting framework. So if they did not meet what we require, then we said, I'm sorry, but you have to provide all the information that we asked of you. It's already all in our greenhouse gas assessment procedure. You just need to read it. So the main components of what we're asking for is, okay, the assessment process and procedures. Who are your assessors and what are their credentials? What is the method that you use to estimate your carbon stock? Who's the team responsible for developing the plan? And then, of course, the summary of your assessment findings. What are the results? And we also need maps. Where is your plan development? And then, what is the different vegetation strata that you have found? And what is the estimated carbon stock for the different stratas? Also, if you have peat, you need to indicate that you have peat, and then where is your peat? So you have to provide all these maps and descriptions. A summary of all your likely sources of greenhouse gas emissions related to the proposed development, and also a list of references used in the assessment. What we normally find is that the companies, sometimes they will neglect to tell us the team responsible for developing the plan, or they will not provide a list of references used, or they do provide maps, but then their maps are not clear, or their legend is so tiny that even after we have expanded it to as much as we can on our screen, we still can't read the text because it's all become pixelated. So these things are not acceptable. And as auditors, I hope you will check for these things, that you submit maps that are legible.
Melissa,
Yes.
this is a wonderful checklist. Of course, if this can be extended to the CBs, will help a lot. In addition, yes, I do know maps is a big issue itself. Probably you ought to come up with some kind of a guidance that what is the map scales to be included, rather than at the end of the day, the whole document is actually going back and forth several times to ensure that all these are legible.
Yes.
In this case, you put the CBs actually in quite an awkward positions, because the CBs will be the one who's submitting the documentations to RSPO. If we have not done it properly, which means that it's a slap on our face, that why can't you guys do a pre-check before submitting to RSPO? So I would appreciate that such kind of things be shared with the CBs,
Yes.
that we do a pre-check before we submit, you see.
Yeah, so this review checklist, actually, it's not something that we have developed. I just basically copied one thing. All of you can just easily get this, because it's basically a copy-paste of the reporting framework that's already in our online greenhouse gas assessment procedure into a table. We did not do anything new about it. So please, I would recommend, if you all have not seen the GHG assessment procedure, to please download it, and then you will find this entire list there, which you can use as a review checklist. And also on the point of the maps, I completely agree with Robert. And in our update, we are going to add extra section to stress more on the map requirement, so that we want to make sure that this is clear. At the same time, this is also something we have noticed in MPP submissions, aside from the whole greenhouse gas thing. Even like with HCB, SEIA, the quality of the maps is sometimes quite bad. So even in our new MPP document, the 2015 document, we have also a guidance now on what we want to see in maps. But unfortunately, I think maybe people are still getting used to it. They don't realize it. We don't still see 100% compliance with what we asked for in the MPP guidance for maps. But in our in our greenhouse gas assessment procedure, because maybe we are looking for more specific things, we are going to expand the section on map requirement to make sure everyone is clear, both auditors and also the companies.
You want to consider, in terms of the GIS itself, into the requirements, plus also what kind of remote sensing options has been undertaken during the GIS reference, you see.
Sorry?
That is actually pretty good. The remote sensing options has been taken by the grower to develop the GIS imagery data.
Do you mean, like, for example, if they use like Landsat 7 image or Landsat 8 image or LiDAR? Is that what you mean?
Yes, whatever they actually, it's good actually that then even BCBs actually can go in and have a look at it through the GIS concept, you see.
So then after that, of course, as I mentioned, quite a big point in 7.8 is the management and mitigation plan. So we also have a section on like what kind of information you need to provide in your plan. So you have to indicate, for example, the carbon stock and the presence of peat soil. So you explain to us what areas, based on your assessments and your findings, what are the areas that you're going to develop on, and what are the areas you are planning to conserve, because it's HCV, it's potentially HCS, or it's a community enclave and all those sort of things, and to also insert the relevant maps. And we did talk about scenario settings. The reason why we say scenario testing is because we don't have a threshold. So it's not to say like, oh, you have, let's say a threshold of 75 tons. Then okay, anything above 75 tons is definitely no-go, and everything below you can clear. So it's very clear to you. But because we don't have a threshold, meaning that there are considerations or scenarios that a company can actually play around with to think about, okay, how best can I design my plantation? So in your scenario setting, you would think, okay, if I were to conserve X number of hectares, if I were to make my threshold, say, 75, or if I were to make my threshold 50, this will be my resulting emissions, and this is the area that I will clear, this is the corresponding area that I will conserve. And then, you would have like some sort of different emission profile based on the scenario that you have created. So what we want to see is some sort of analysis in terms of your decision making on how you ended up picking the plantation development plan that you have picked. So what scenarios did you consider? What were the greenhouse gas emissions associated with those scenarios? And why did you choose the most optimal? And notice we use the word optimal rather than the lowest emission scenario, because we recognize that the lowest emission scenario might not always be the most feasible and practical development plan for a company. That's why we said optimal. Yes?
Point here now. In your greenhouse gas assessment tool here, you have a table of all these default values. Basing on the growers who's playing around with our numbers, they come out with all the calculations and derive certain values they have calculated. Now, given the scenario itself, that they can also say, if I feel that actually is that because of these scenarios I've created, basing on my high HCV assessments on certain areas of the carbon stock between above and below ground have this certain value, I may want to switch back to use my default value rather than going to the actual values. How would actually then RSPO to review such type of things that the grower can actually switch around on default and actual values? Once you go into default values, will you be able to, once you go into actual values, will you be able to allow to go back to default values or not? That is actually a very important thing to actually emphasize on this, you see.
Okay, so currently in our assessment procedure, because we recognize that different companies have different resources, different capacity also to do all these assessments, we have options. So a company can completely base their estimation on field measurements. Of course, companies with a lot of resources for themselves, they would do that. Some companies would prefer to just use the default value as a proxy to their estimation. So we didn't really specify this, but perhaps we need to give more guidance on that, because that was also one of the discussions that we had. It's good that the assessment procedure has all this flexibility, but at the same time, certain things need to be tightened, and this is something that we are looking at in the update, meaning to make sure that at least everyone meets a minimum standard of quality. Okay? And then if you want to go higher than that because you have the more resources, then you can choose whatever options, but everyone should actually meet this standard requirement. You have to do this, 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 this. But coming back to your question, so far we have not seen it in the sense that there's cherry picking. So either what we have seen is if they use default, they use all default. If they use actual, they use all actual. And actually, what most people complain about to us is that our default value is too conservative. So actually, their actual values are lower than what we have provided, which is basically what we want to do. We want to encourage more, accurate estimations. So our default values tend to be more conservative to sort of like discourage its use unless you really have to. Another comment we got also is that our default values are too limited in the sense that we have only like very few classifications, and they have asked for expansions for it to be more reflective and more friendly to use as well. And this is something that we are considering in our update. So we're actually going to expand the list of vegetation types for the defaults. Sorry, I have not actually finished this. So once you have picked your optimal scenario, then you should explain why you picked. And this is one of the weaknesses that we have seen in the reports as well. There is very little explanation of why they will pick one scenario over the other. One thing, there's very little explanation of the scenarios itself. So sometimes as a reader, when I read, I can't really understand what exactly is scenario 1, 2, and 3. And then after that, I say, oh, I picked scenario 2. Very little explanation on why scenario 2 was picked. In fact, I've even seen a couple of reports where it just says, we have decided to pick scenario 2, full stop. End of story, move on to the next section. So, I mean, this is not good. You need to explain why. I'm sure there were reasons why scenario 2 was the most optimal scenario for that company. Provide some explanation, so at least it shows to us that you have considered these things and have taken into account, and this is your decision. So lastly, we also need to show the internal responsibility. So we want to see the formal signing off of the assessors and company, and then a statement of acceptance of responsibility for the assessments by the company. Also a formal signing off of management and mitigation plans, some organizational information and contact persons, and the personnel involved in planning and implementation.
Any kind of dialogue sessions between the growers and those potential assessors doing such type of things that they can actually make the report more readable and accessible easily. Of course, I don't know what is the level of RSPO expecting the CB's auditors to really look into it or not in this aspect, you see. If there's an expectation to look into it, then we have to actually get into a group of people who really understands what is all this about, you see. Like I have just recently reviewed one, I only can just do a certain level of thing because I do not want to get involved into the discussion because I'm not in the picture, in the scenario to say that whether the assessor has done it right or wrong, you see. I only can take up the things and just say, yes, they've done this, they've done this, they've done this, that's it, and I can do it. But then, what I explained just now between the scenarios developed itself, that you need the HCS assessors and the HCB assessors jointly together with the SEIA assessors to sit down with the growers to come up with the entire management plan and what is the best scenarios to be adopted into the calculator. But right now, I did not see this kind of process going through, see?
No. I mean, of course, what you have described is the ideal process, but on the ground, obviously, these things happen at different times. But I think more and more people are realizing that for it to be efficient, the assessments need to be integrated. But at the moment, we are not seeing it. And I understand that there is a conversation under the HCS approach to look at the integration of HCS, HCV, and FPIC. And there is also a conversation involving the HCV resource network to adopt HCS as one of the HCV values. So the whole thing falls under one assessment only. And in that assessment, you look at HCV and HCS. To me, that's the most ideal. But of course, these things take time. It doesn't happen overnight. So at the moment, we are where we are on these things. As to the expectation for the auditor, at the moment, we would like the auditor at least to check based on this review checklist. Is all the information there, and then is it given? I mean, so far in our experience from the Secretariat, when we check according to this checklist, we can actually pick out the gaps and of information based on this. At the moment, we do not require, or I would say require, we do not expect the auditors to be able to say, this is right and this is wrong, this assessment is bad and this assessment is good. But then, even sometimes following this checklist, looking at what they have provided, information provided, they even describe the methodology, you can also tell whether this is a bad report or a decent report. Yeah. So what are the common issues when reviewing submissions? I have touched a little bit on this when I was going through the checklist. So initially we had some confusion with the land use change analysis, but thankfully that has been rectified after speaking to some companies. But the others are still there, so which is why we want to address it with better explanation in our greenhouse gas assessment procedure, because we realize that the fault is not necessarily on the companies. We could have actually improved on our side in giving better guidance for these things. The maps are not well explained. There's poor description of the kind of vegetation strata that they see and the corresponding carbon stock. And it gets a bit complicated when it's about an expansion rather than a completely new development. So you have an existing operation, maybe they are expanding into the neighboring estate, and then the report is not very clear what is actually based on this new expansion and what is based on their existing operation. So we find that these things sometimes is not well explained, and we are going to, make sure we put it in our report. Okay, when you are in this scenario where you have an ongoing ongoing operation and then you're expanding, how you should, do your reporting. So we realize there's a gap on our side. We are not very clear on that. So we're going to address it in the update. And then also there is a lack of scenario testing and also an explanation of scenarios and why and stuff like that. So we are going to provide more examples in the greenhouse gas assessment procedure update, like what do we mean, this is what you do, in a more step-by-step way. Hopefully it becomes clearer. We also are thinking about how, once we have all these things, we're going to talk a lot more to companies, auditors, and also assessors to make sure they are clear on exactly what we want through the greenhouse gas assessment procedure. And there's also very poor description on how or whether the carbon stock assessment, together with the other related assessments, influence the outcome of plantation plan and design. So actually, what we find is the report doesn't give us the kind of information that we need. So we are trying to sort of like address this in our outreach with growers and assessors, and also in the update of our procedure. Okay, how are smallholders expected to comply with 7.8? So I think maybe Julia said a little bit of something about this. So we are coming up with a guidance. We noticed that right now we are very focused on the big companies and that we really have to think about smallholders. So it's already agreed that the working group, the emission reduction working group and the smallholder working group will have to develop jointly develop additional guidance just for smallholders. And we are already planning 2 workshops with the group managers of smallholders to talk about this, along with other issues, to make sure that we can identify and address all those information gaps and how we can produce better guidance for them. But at the moment, if it's scheme smallholders, then it's the responsibility of the company, but then we still need to understand a little bit more about the independent smallholders to provide the guidance. Finally, all necessary documents are available on the RSPO website, so you just need to go to the Carbon Assessment Tool website, and you will find the greenhouse gas assessment procedure. We have also released an FAQ and all other related documentation. It's also on our website. Currently, our greenhouse gas assessment procedure is available in English, in Bahasa, in Spanish, and in French. We are looking to develop a Thai one as well, but most likely the Thai translated version will be based on the updated procedure. Okay, so questions?
you have a new NPP requirements from 2015 onwards. All right. Now, there is actually an announcement of the new inclusions in NPP submissions after 1st August 2014. Does this still applicable in terms of the greenhouse gas issues that has been addressed following this 2014 document, or fully in compliance to the 2015 requirements?
So the requirements for this to comply with 7.8 is as of all MPP submitted in 1st January 2015. So, but then of course all the MPP submitted then on 1st January 2015 follows the format and everything of the MPP 2010 document. But then come, I think, middle of this year, everyone would need to follow the MPP 2015 version. But the MPP 2015 version refers directly back to the greenhouse gas assessment procedure. So if you follow what's needed in the greenhouse gas assessment procedure, then that's fine already. The only thing that is new is that now in the MPP itself actually mentions the need to prepare this document, whereas the old MPP document doesn't.
You have actually this 2014 document here, clearly state about announcement of new inclusions to MPP submissions after 1st August 2014. So does this document really applicable?
There is no document in terms of August 20. It's just, it was an announcement that we announced that as of 1st August 2014, all MPP submissions, you need to include the 7.8. But then we received a lot of comments from companies after that. And because of that, we actually issued a new announcement saying that it will be as of 1st January 2015. So we gave a grace period. Initially, we wanted to make it 1st August 2014, but based on all the feedback we got from companies, they felt that this was unfair. They are unprepared to be able to do it. So we gave them that grace period. So we said 1st January 2015. So are there any more questions with regards to this? Because then after that, I'll go on to the Palm GHG. And I realize it's late in the afternoon and you know everyone, it's basically the graveyard shift lah. And I don't have chocolates for questions, so there are no incentives. Sorry? So, yes?
Sorry, in the announcement RSPO carbon assessment tool for new oil palm plantation, this is state for new planting where the NPP is submitted from 1 January 2015. Okay, this is must the comply to 7.8. Okay, so how to ongoing? Okay, sorry, ongoing company not don't have the activity new planting, but explanation must comply. This is 7.8 or not?
Ongoing planting.
Okay, existing this me audit to company existing. Okay, but in the condition in the field, the company not have the new planting, don't have the planting. So I must explain about the requirement 7.8 or not?
If there is no new planting.
No.
Then, if there's no new plantings, then 7.8. If there is no new plantings, then 7.8 doesn't apply because 7.8 is specifically for new plantation development. Yeah. So but for existing operation, they still have a greenhouse gas requirement, but that's like 5.6 where they need to do their annual estimation of their operational emissions. So that one needs to go. Yeah. To still yes. So yes, this is really for when they are going into new areas where they're clearing the area for the first time and putting in the all palm trees. Once they already have the all palm tree there, then all of the things need to be put into 5.6 because 5.6 is for existing operations.